Hi guys, welcome to M&D Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. We're going to be looking at the monitoring and evaluation life cycle. So the issue is this, guys. If you enter an organization, what are the first things you have to do in order to kickstart the monitoring and evaluation in that organization? So I've received a lot of questions from especially those who are beginners. If you are beginners in the M&D field, this is a video for you. But also for those who've been doing it for a very long time, this is also important because there are certain steps that you miss out on. Even I miss them out sometimes. I can be a culprit in that, but it's always good to sharpen each other. But before I go any further, for those of you who are here for the very first time, my name is Coach Alexander. I've been doing this for over 10 years now. And if you are new to this channel, please subscribe. We need the numbers. We need to keep growing this channel so that many people around the world can access this information for free. Because once you subscribe, once the numbers go high, it becomes popular and many people can get this information handy. So please do well to subscribe. Now, I have a special treat for all of you. There's this logical framework analysis guide. It's totally free. I'll leave the link in the description below so that you can actually download it. Okay, so please feel free to get this ebook because it's going to help you understand why you need an LFA in your programming and how do you actually develop it. You know, I like to think of the LFA as the Bible for all M&D specialists around the world, because that is where you actually get the blueprint of what you need to measure. So please guys, download this book. It's totally free. I'll leave the link in the description below. But then I have to mention this to all of you that there will be a monitoring and evaluation beginners guide, latest edition for 2022. Be on the lookout. It will be released soon and it will be far much better than the previous one, so please be on the lookout. So as oh yeah, and one last thing, please, you need to enroll for the 6 months coaching program. I've already received some students. As I am speaking right now, some students have already enrolled in the 6 months coaching program, but it's never too late because I know that there are many people out there who want to enroll in it. Some of them are just not too sure whether this is actually real. I want to assure you guys there that this thing is actually real. People are getting trained, and if you want, you can reach out to me and I can introduce you to 1 or 2 students who are actually benefiting from this program. So please enroll in this coaching program. You get personal one-on-one coaching in M&D. So as usual, this video is quite long, so do well to use the timestamps in the description below so that you don't need to watch things. Probably you don't want to watch the whole video, you just want to watch certain parts of this video which you think are relevant to you. So take full advantage of the timestamps below. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into business. Okay, so the M&D process can be summed up in 3 specific layers, okay, or I would say 3 important steps. Okay, you've got the first step, which is the planning, and then you've got the monitoring, and then you've got the evaluation. This is the process of M&E in any organization around the world. So the planning, okay, now let me talk about the planning because this is where it all begins. This is the genesis. When you want to implement a project, the project management team will sit down and decide on what they want to exactly achieve at the end of the day. So it is in this phase where they'll even set up the indicators. This is where you actually come up with the logical framework. It is at this planning stage. This is an important part of the M&D process because if you don't come up with the right indicators, even the monitoring process will be very much affected negatively. So this is also where you develop your M&D plan. This is where you develop the M&D tools. And this is also where you plan to undertake the baseline survey. So it all happens just here. So after you've planned your project and then it gets approved by the donors, you begin what is known as the monitoring. So you look at the indicators that you planned in the project document, and then you start monitoring them to see whether indeed any change has happened at inception until the end of the project. So the monitoring comes here. So this is where now you go into the field, you collect data, you report on that data, management looks at that data and sees whether there's any change happening. So now after you've implemented your project, at this stage, this is where the evaluation takes place. So this is where actually, after you've implemented your project, you get someone independent to come and assess you. You cannot do the assessment yourself. So based on what the consultant says or the independent person says, you are going to make adjustments and then do a new planning for the next phase of the project. So now let's get into detail, shall we? So what is planning? I like this the saying by Benjamin Franklin: if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail, which is so true even in our personal lives. I want to appeal to all of you one thing, and I've been talking about this with the students that I coach, that don't look at M&E as a job that you go to work for, you go because you're getting paid. Look at it as a personal thing, something in your personal life. Because I look at myself and realize that it's something that you can actually do to monitor whether you've achieved goals in your own personal life. Okay, so I know some of you might think I'm talking too much, but believe you me, this knowledge I'm giving you could change your life. So the process of planning is all about goals. What do you want to achieve at the end of the day? Where do you want to go? That's the question you should be asking yourself, even when you're doing these projects. Okay, now one of the things I've noticed is that we may plan for big things, which is not a bad thing. If you have a plan to bring poverty levels to 0%, that's a good vision. Okay, if you have the goal of improving people's incomes, it's a good goal. Okay, but it's also important to remember that as you do your planning, how are you going to be able to measure whether poverty levels have reduced? Okay, the United Nations has come up with indicators that explains poverty levels. What does it mean? Okay, those indicators have been developed in such a way that if you go and monitor and collect data, you're able to detect whether somebody is living in poverty or not. Someone who is living on less than $5 a day is in poverty, but anything above that, probably he's not. Okay, but that's something we can always debate on. There are different types of plans. Okay, and we've got the monitoring and evaluation plan, which I've talked about a dozen of times, and I'll continue talking about it because it's a very important document in every organization around the world. Mind you, we are not just talking about grant-aided organizations, but even the governments. All these governments around, they have M&D systems. They also have a plan in place. The logical framework very important. It's a kind of plan. You've got a strategic plan. Okay, most countries around, I can't think of any country around the world that doesn't have a strategic plan. Even if it doesn't come in the, it's not, they don't phrase it, they don't say it's a strategic plan, but it's actually a plan of what they want to achieve at the end of a certain period of time. You've got the operational annual work plan, and you've also got the project plan. These are not the only plans, but they are the main ones which you are going to find each time you enter an organization. Now, my appeal to you, if you are new to M&E, the first thing you ask for when you enter an organization is a monitoring and evaluation plan, or the log frame itself, or the program plan as well. So now, after you've done the planning, like I mentioned, the next stage is to monitor. The planning sets the pace. You have set out the indicators, what you want to achieve. Okay, the strategic plan will tell you what you want to achieve at the end of the 5 years. So the next stage is that as you start the implementation of the activities, you want to see whether indeed so you are achieving your goals. And if you're not achieving your goals, you take corrective action so that you can actually achieve your goals. So monitoring is systematic. You don't just go out there and say, okay, I'm going to monitor. Because you're called the M&D officer, you just tell yourself, no, I just want to go and monitor today. It doesn't work like that. You need to have them scheduled and planned. Because you know the thing about the activities that we do. Let's say if your project is doing trainings, okay? Those trainings are done at a specific point in time. Now, once those trainings are completed, you don't just go in there to see whether any change has happened. It takes time. You have to wait for a while before you can see the change. So if the trainings were being done monthly, you probably go in to see whether change has happened quarterly. But also, you have to realize that it is systematic to have these scheduled in such a way that if you have data being collected monthly, it's not necessarily okay. You don't really need to collect this data monthly yourself. To consolidate the findings, it's probably good to go and consolidate monthly data on a quarterly basis, because that way it is much more systematic. Remember that management is using this information, and this information is going to help them come up with decisions that will ensure that this project actually achieves its goals. So you have to ensure that whatever data is being collected, it must be systematic, it must be well scheduled, and also it must be good quality data, which I'm going to talk about later on, maybe probably in the coming weeks, so that we understand what data quality auditing is all about. Now, like I earlier mentioned, the monitoring activity can be done, it's actually done on a regular basis. It can be done weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or even annually. But the key is for you to understand what you're tracking. Because take, for instance, if you are monitoring crop production only takes place annually for most crops. Unless you are doing irrigation, you probably could be if you are growing crops using irrigation means, you probably would be doing it maybe quarterly or semi-annually, depending on what crop you're growing. But another indicator I can talk about is the number of trainings. If you're doing trainings on a quarterly basis, then you should be probably monitoring it quarterly. It could be a good idea. So the frequency of the monitoring depends on the type of indicator that you're tracking. So in the cycle, in the project, the M&D cycle, you need to first of all understand what you're actually monitoring. Now, this is the final part of the life cycle of the M&E. It is the evaluation stage. So what is evaluation? It is an assessment. Okay, it is an in-depth assessment. It's usually done by highly skilled professionals who have vast knowledge and experience on a specific subject matter. And that is why, for example, if you are doing an energy saving project or a climate change project, if you are going to get someone to determine whether your project had an impact, you look for an expert with many years of experience in the subject matter. So the evaluation is systematic as well, but it is an in-depth assessment to see whether any results have been achieved from this project. It's a very important part of the M&D cycle, because if you don't do this, you won't be able to know for sure whether your project had an impact or not. It is highly recommended that this is done, even though some organizations might feel it's expensive, but it's very important because it informs the design of the next project implementation phase. Now, there are different types of evaluation. You've got the baseline. Okay, some people might ask, is this really an evaluation? Actually, it is. If you do your reading well, you're going to find out that the baseline is actually it's actually an evaluation. You've got the midterm evaluation, and then you've got the end line evaluation, as well as the impact evaluation. So these are all important evaluations. So now I must mention that these different types of activities have unique importance to the project. And if you're a coordinator of any project around the world, you discover that all these different types of evaluations are unique. The baseline gives you where you are currently before the start of the project. This is important because if you don't do the baseline, you won't be able to measure whether you've progressed or not, because you need a benchmark to compare to. Let's say in 2019, poverty levels were 19%. In 2022, you go out there, you find out poverty levels are 15%. So for you to make the comparison, you discover that you have the baseline. So you can say 19% minus 15% is 4%. So poverty has reduced by 4%. It's because you were able to determine that because of the baseline. The midterm evaluation helps you to assess whether any substantial progress has been made since the start of the project. It's done midway the project cycle. So what happens is that you try to use that as an opportunity to take corrective action before it's too late. So this midterm evaluation is done to make corrections before it's too late, and they do it midway the project cycle. Then finally, you've got the end line evaluation, which is done right at the end of the project. Then you've got the impact evaluation, which is done 3 to 5 years after project completion. The reason that is done is because change takes time. So you need to realize that when this is done, it will actually be able to tell you whether your project had an impact or not. Okay, so guys, I want to make this reminder. Please enroll in the 6 months coaching program. Write to me for further information concerning this. Now, after the evaluation has been done, management are going to sit down and reflect. They're going to ask themselves, what did we do well? Where did we fail? And why? After they sit down, they brainstorm, they'll realize that there are certain things they need to change in order to guarantee success. So they're going to redesign, they're going to get the same project, but they'll change the way they implemented it. Okay, they're going to they'll probably add certain things, they'll probably subtract certain things, and then they'll try to make it better than it was before. That is why, if you've noticed some projects, if you had a 3-year project, it will be called phase 1. Then the next 3 years will be called phase 2, and phase 2 will be better than the phase 1 project, because the phase 2 project would have corrected the mistakes that the phase 1 project did. Now, this is my favorite part. Let's go to the keynotes. Guys, when it comes to M&D, learn to accept the results, whether they are positive or negative. Okay? The reason is that the nature of projects around the world is that most of these projects are subjected to a lot of risk. Okay? I'll give you an example. The COVID-19 pandemic has created problems even in project implementations around the world. So you will get bad results. Okay? So remember that you need to accept the results. Don't look for someone to blame. Don't blame your M&D officers. I know sometimes these officers are blamed, and it's not right. Try to look at the bigger picture. Use these results to improve on the implementation of your project. And then enshrine M&E in the culture, the work culture of individuals in the organization. Make sure it becomes a cultural thing. Okay? And when I say cultural, I mean that people should realize why they are doing what they are doing. Why is monitoring and evaluation important? People should realize, why is it important to submit reports on time? Why is it important to have good quality data? We need to have this enshrined in all our stuff. So right now, I want to say thank you so much. Please write to me. That's my email address below. Until we meet again, see you on the other side. Bye.